Scientology could be called, well, you could call it a religion of religions.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy, and these are secret closed-door briefings about vital information about Scientology and the world that you need to know. And today's briefing isn't too much to do with Scientology because I'm moving these away from Scientology. And it's actually going to be my last briefing about my experience with the legal system. And I won't be able to finish my story because so much has happened in my experience in the legal system that I can't finish this series of briefings because it's going to go to 10 briefings. And this briefing here, I think, is part 6. And I've just got to cut it here and just stop doing this because there's just so much I have to say. And so I've made a list of dot points here. I'm going to try and get through all these. But basically, in case you haven't joined in this series of briefings I've had, a few years ago I had an experience with the legal system, and it started a few years ago and it lasted for 2 years because it's so long and so much happened, and I'd never had an experience in the legal system before. So it was all like a huge learning experience, and to understand how things really work and how courtrooms work and jail worked, because I ended up going to jail, and it's a whole long story, how the police operate, and just I learnt so much, and it absolutely confirmed my conspiratorial beliefs. But I mean, for me personally, I learnt heaps from this, and if you want to imagine what it's like the COVID situation we're going through right now. It's like your knowledge base prior to COVID and now your knowledge base after COVID. Because after COVID, it's like, whoa, I get it. They really are secretly running the world. They're secretly doing this and that, and whoa, it's a whole worldwide operation, and they're actually there, and Alex Jones was right, and it's like, whoa. So that's what it was like for me. So this is an exciting experience because I've managed to have this legal experience. It's like, whoa, it exploded my knowledge. And then COVID, it's like, whoa, and exploded my knowledge. Because when I first went into this legal experience, I thought, like, why is God making this happen? And then I thought, it always ends up being something like a learning experience. And then I just started learning more and more things from day one, and I'm so much wiser, so much wiser. And when you think about politicians, they're lawyers. They're involved with the legal system, Judges and stuff sort of pretty much run the world and that. And whenever you've got a communist system, you've got heaps of bureaucrats and government workers and lawyers and all this crap. So to understand what's going on in the world, you need to understand the legal system. And the legal system is a disciplinary system. And when you see all this crazy stuff that's going on right now with COVID, obviously our disciplinary system is messed up, because why are people getting away with this? Well, I know, because I know it's completely messed up. And I was just naive back then. I mean, I knew things were messed up, but not like how they really are. It's really off the rails. And recently in Melbourne, Melbourne has just exploded in its police state. What happened was that I'll just mention this before I get into this briefing because it's just so interesting. So I don't know if you've seen the footage across the world. I posted some stuff, but it couldn't go to Facebook. And then it went to the podcast app, but then I had to delete it because I was worried about the police coming after me. And I'm being serious. Like, you don't know how... We're under like a system that's like North Korea here. I mean, this is full blown. I would prefer to be in North Korea, honestly. Right now, the living standards are better in North Korea than what they are in Melbourne, Australia. What happened was that I went to a bunch of protests and filmed them and stuff, and so I can't keep the Facebook posts up or the footage up or anything like that for security reasons, because the police are like going after people who go to these protests. So what's happened is that our government has put us through 6 lockdowns here in Melbourne, and 2 of them have been extremely long, and the third one, oh well, it's not the third one, it's actually the 6th one, but The sixth one is being another long one as well. And this long one is purely to force us to get the jab. It's just strong arming us. It's coercing us to get the jab. It's like being in a Scientology church where they force you to join staff and you don't really want to. That's what the government's doing to us. Because for the first 6 months that the jab was out, they just relied on people who wanted to get it and were obviously easily brainwashed. And then now they just had to use heavier tactics. So they put us into lockdown maybe 2 months ago, and since then they've also mandated it for certain jobs. So they've mandated it for teachers and I think for truck drivers and for the construction industry. And the protest movement was growing, right, with this last lockdown, because people have started to really wake up, and it's just really pushed people too far. And now the people who don't want to get the jab, we're now actually having to fight for survival. So the protest movement started growing about 2 months ago, like significantly, and now it just recently exploded in numbers. And what happened is that they forced the construction workers to get the jab, and a lot of them didn't want to get it and started protesting. And there was already a protest organised for freedom, people who were against the vaccines, against the lockdowns and stuff. There was already protests for that, and it coincided with the same timing that they forced the construction workers to get the jab. So it's just been really wild in the past week in Melbourne. So we've had 5 days of protests and 2 days of failed protests, but the attempt to protest, right? And in the past week. And throughout that, the police has thrown so much resources into stopping these protests. It's epic. So anyway, I've got some footage of some of these things, but I can't show them and stuff. Yeah, but for security reasons, and I don't think I can film anything in the future. And now, whenever anyone goes to these protests, they're going to have to be in disguise. So, like, you know, wear glasses, hat, bit of a face mask, so you can't be recognised by the security cameras around the city. I'm not joking. They're using them to try and locate protesters. So I'm a part of the underground resistance, literally full-blown like World War II style. Worse, way worse. What they're doing here is way worse than the Nazis ever did, because they're trying to kill I can't say, but I got to be careful because this video will get deleted from YouTube, but with the little operation they're doing, it's not like they're targeting a certain part of the community that they consider unhealthy and that need to be gotten rid of, which was what the Nazis were trying to do. They were trying to get like cancer out of their society. What they've come up with is hitting everyone, right? So it's just a full-blown depop, okay? Let's leave it at that, okay? So it's so evil. It's so evil. And anyway, so what happened was that I was helping promote one of these demonstrations. I don't even know if I can talk about any of this stuff. I mean, it's lucky that I haven't been arrested yet, but I was helping promote, and I was postulating for the protests that happened like a week ago. And we got a big turnout, which was great because I was postulating that. But the police turnout was off the charts. I mean, so many cop cars. You can't see the footage now. Like, you might have already seen the video that was up for just 2 days or whatever. But the police full on shut down the city. Like, all the roads going to city were shut down, and they were checking paperwork of people, you know, if they were essential workers, if they're allowed to be on the streets and working or whatever. It's just full-blown insane North Korea. It's been the world communist government has been unleashed on Melbourne completely. Anyway, the protest got moved to being just outside of the city, but it was hard to get up and running, and it was never really proper, and there was just so much police resources put into this, just so much. But there was such a big turnout that they managed to not shut it down. And there was a lot of police brutality footage, which you might have seen. So there was a Friday, there was like a sort of a mini protest by construction workers. Then there was the Saturday, which was the big worldwide protest. And there was protests all around the world organised for it. And of course, the Melbourne one was just the most violent of them all. I mean, you watch all these footages about all these protests around the world, and it's just people walking down the street. And Melbourne's one is like, whoa. Melbourne's one's like abuse from cops and just violence and just craziness. Melbourne is just, it's so communist and police state. Then there was, on Monday, there was more stuff. Tuesday, we blocked a freeway. And then Wednesday, we were at a war memorial. And then 2 other days where they weren't able to get together, because you can only do it when you're in a big number, because then the cops will actually back off. But if you're in small groups, the cops will come and shoot you with rubber bullets. And these bullets are pretty brutal. I got hit by one. So there's just all this violent footage of like cops walking up to protesters and just grabbing them and slamming them on the ground and stuff. And there's one footage of some guy, and I don't even think he's a protester, but he just points to a car, and it's an unmarked car, and out comes like terrorist army police, and they just punch him in the face and grab him and throw him on the ground. And there's photos of like tanks going down, like it's some sort of armoured car going down the city in Melbourne, and cops, like riot squad cops around the car, and from the car shooting at protesters and stuff. Like, it's gone completely off the charts insane. And this is how evil the left is. This is how evil our premier dictator Dan is, that is doing all this stuff, because they are serious about COVID. They're like, no, COVID's a real thing. It really is dangerous, and there's going to be no protest because it's going to damn well spread. And they're using that as the excuse, and they know the truth about COVID. They know it's bullshit, but they're trying to make their utopian world, and they are willing to just sacrifice people, and it's gone to just insane brutality levels. It's been a war zone, and Melbourne has just been written off. It's like Melbourne's exploding or something. Like, it is just, it's so messed up. Like, the city is so different. It's just getting worse. It's like full-blown crazy sci-fi movie level, and it's just getting worse as this pandemic goes on. And the Melburnians, which I'm so proud of, are resisting this, and we're really starting to get together and network and stuff, and resist to force vaccines. And they're just unleashing everything they can on us to try and break us. And our vaccination rate, our single jab vaccination rate, I think is up to 76, I think, which is significantly behind in most parts of the world. And so Sydney's further ahead than us, but we're really resisting in Melbourne, which is great. But it's just been so off the charts. So don't be surprised if I suddenly go missing or something, because it's just, I've got to be really clever, and I'm living in a full-blown crazy sci-fi movie. This is like a conspiracy theorist's worst situation. I mean, it's happening. It's absolutely happening. But I'm not at all negative. I'm actually really happy that these protests has happened, because I was postulating for one big day of protest, right? And then we had multiple days, and it just ended up being this huge thing. Now the protest movement has boomed, and we're watching their house of cards possibly fall down, because it's really fragile. Like, if you look at their whole COVID thing, it's just full of holes. It's like the freaking Titanic. It should sink. You know what I mean? And we're starting to watch it sink, and we're seeing the 100th monkey effect, right? Which is, if you don't know what that is, it's when they had these monkeys, and one monkey learned how to wash a clam on an island, and then taught another one, and then another one. And when they got to 100 monkeys that were washing their clams, the monkeys on the other island that weren't even in communication started washing their clams. It was like something got unlocked in their mind like that, because we're all wirelessly connected in another dimension, and it unlocked, right? And that's what we're having right now happen in Melbourne, and I think the world. People's minds, we're reaching the 100 monkey effect. People's minds are unlocking, going, what the hell is going on? This is just a police state. This isn't what they say. Like, this is crazy. And people are working it out, and people are finding out about the side effects and everything. And so the protest movement is just booming, and the cops and the government are freaking out and throwing all they can at it. They even shut down helicopters from flying and filming protests, so people couldn't get information of where the crowds were, and they shut down people's internet and stuff, and it's just been so crazy. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention that, but you know, if you see any of this footage out of Melbourne, there's heaps of things, because people have camera phones now, so everyone's capturing the footage of this brutality that's going on. And the police are just, I told you the police were messed up. I told you they were no good and they were a scam. But this is just like, whoa, you know. Anyway, we've got to wake the police up, because how it works out is that the communists use the police because they're dumbasses and they just follow orders. And a lot of them, I think, are just power-hungry pricks. So wherever you are in the world, you've got to be careful of your police force being used for inappropriate things and becoming evil, because they're the ones who end up enforcing this stuff. So we've got to wake the police up, because the police are the tool of the elite, of the communist world government. They use the police forces of each city to enforce all this crap, right? They're like their little puppets. So we're going to be enslaving ourselves, and it's just crazy. And it's because there are people who are willing to do anything for money. It's absolutely disgusting. Like, I would never work for them, ever. Like, because I'll just be like, no, I'm not going to go do that. No, I disagree. That's completely wrong. Those citizens have a right to protest. I'll be like, no, we shouldn't be forcing that. But like, no, this is all violations. But I'll get fired. So they find people who are just like disgraceful. But there are cops that are waking up, and we've got to wake them up, because we've got to break that tool. You know what I mean? We've got to break that, because when we break that, then we can be free. You know what I mean? And then unless they then bring in the army or something like that, and the army are an even more extreme version of the police. They don't even think at all. They just follow orders completely, and they're divorced from communication with the public, and they're like, whoa, the army. I really have problems respecting them, because I know what sort of personality that they're like. They just talk about, and they can't think. They're just designed to be robots. So, I mean, it's brutal, but I'm just watching the city implode. And then we had an earthquake the other day, which was really unusual, and honestly could have been the government who caused it. Like, I'm not kidding, because it was so unusual in the timing of it. And whenever there's coincidences, it's usually because they're not coincidences. Okay, so possibly was a big distraction from the protest, but things are looking good, because this is history in the making, what we're going through at the moment. If we resist these forced vaccines for certain employment and stuff, then they won't be able to make us have it to go to the football. They won't be able to make us have it to go and do this and that. We're protecting freedoms for the future generations of generations of generations, because they're trying to put this new system in, and they're trying to make it stay. You know what I mean? Like when did we all start having running water pipes put into our houses? Okay, I don't know when they started that, maybe 100 years ago or something. That was an infrastructure that they put in, or like a new invention that we all put into our societies, and now we have this new world where we have water running to our houses. They're doing the same thing with COVID. They're putting in this whole police state infrastructure, and it's going to stay, and this is how they want for their new world. But we can derail this program, and we're right now in the huge battleground. We're in the battleground, and this is it. This is just epic. We're fighting for something that's just far more important than like World War One and World War Two and those sorts of ridiculous wars. This is the real war. I mean, we're fighting to protect our freedoms from here on out, and I think that their plan is so bold. It's such a big move that they have to really do this in an expert way. Otherwise, it could stuff up, and I think we're starting to witness it stuff up. And it's just disgusting. It's just so disgusting what's going on. And I knew the government were evil and the leftists were evil and stuff, but this is a whole new level. Like, the left-wing media like isn't like saying it's disgraceful what they're doing to the protesters and stuff. They're like protecting the police and stuff for their brutality, and it's like they are just so evil, these lefties, and the system is so evil. Because even if you do totally believe in COVID and you think vaccines should be forced and stuff, I don't think you should agree with firing rubber bullets at crowds and stuff, and just this brutal tactics and having the military run around the city. But they're freaking out. They've thrown so many resources. They've been building up a police state for ages, and you can see footage of just cop car after cop car after cop car after cop car, and just all these resources. And it's like, what the hell? I mean, you think that like with all these cops out there, you think that if your car got broken into, they would be able to find the guy. But no, that doesn't happen, because they're all there to to manage the civilians and to bring in this new world order. Anyway, that's all I have to say, but the stuff has really changed in the past week, and it's been absolutely epic. So back to my experience in the legal system, I'll just go through all these points quickly, and I'm not going to be able to finish my story. So if you've been following these, you're not even going to really know the full story of what actually happened to me. And don't think you know what happened to me and then go tell people like what John Atack did when he just looked at some things on the internet, and then in his video he said what my legal experience was, and it was just wrong. It was just wrong. And that's where I realized he was an unreliable source of information, because I'm like, he looks at data and he just comes to wrong conclusions. And he opens up his mouth and he speaks with confidence about things that he hasn't even fully investigated, and he's come to wrong conclusions. He's a broken calculator. And on that topic, I've been sending him information about COVID and stuff like that and the truth about it, and he doesn't even acknowledge it. It's like the 9/11 thing, when I mentioned to him 9/11 being done by the government. He doesn't even think about it and go, oh, okay. He doesn't have an open mind. He doesn't go, oh, well, let's look into it. He just goes, that's ridiculous, and then just moves on. So this is why I'm saying you can't trust John Atack and the books he's written and stuff like that, because he's a terrible researcher. He's a faulty calculator. He produces wrong results. And he's written a damn book about Scientology, and you can't rely on him. He's retarded. He's flat out retarded. Right? You send him information about the COVID vax, and he responds with saying, you've got to read a book about how vaccines don't cause autism. And it's like, this is a whole different subject. The vaccines causing autism is different to the COVID vax and what's going on right now. Okay? No one said that the COVID vax is giving people autism. And it's just, they're irrelevant subjects. He just cannot confront the truth of what's going on. He cannot confront conspiracies. He can't confront that a group of people control our governments, and they will trick them into thinking there's a bug in order to roll out a police state and to forcibly jab everyone and do all this stuff. Okay? He can't work that out. Okay? Anyway, now this video is going to get banned. Okay, and this channel's all over and shit anyway. I mean, I don't expect this channel, even if this video doesn't get banned, to even last that much longer anyway, because eventually I'll have a new channel and I'll post something new, and because this channel is connected to my name, they'll just delete this whole channel, right? And then all these interesting interviews that I've done about Scientology, they're all gone. But I'll have to probably upload it to BitChute or something like that. But anyway, shit's just gone off the rails, but there are people out there that have these lefty minds, these retarded minds, and they're not open minds, and they can't understand conspiracies and have no idea what's going on in the world. No idea. And they're the ones who are writing books. They're the ones who are the professors. They're the ones who get to go on TV shows. They're the ones who host radio shows in Melbourne. And they're just giving people a totally wrong interpretation of reality, and they're contributing to the enslavement of humanity. And that's why John Attack, I hate the guy, because he's evil. He is 100% evil. He's supporting an evil system and everything. But he can't even help it. He's just retarded. He can't help that he's like that, you know? So now I just want to say to you, think twice about reading any of his books or even listening to his interviews, because the guy's a retard. Genuinely a retard. And I know what I sounds crazy. The government can cause earthquakes. Yes, they can. The government can control the weather. Yes, they can. There's aliens. Yes, there is. The government's met up with them. I know all the shit that I say sounds crazy. I know it. But it is the fucking truth. All right? You don't know what the hell's going on in the world, okay? You haven't studied enough. Anyway, but you guys are pretty switched on and aware. But I'm telling you, the truth is fucking crazy. Full-blown crazy. What's going on? Okay? And it's because I'm so smart that it sounds like I'm so dumb. Do you understand? Because when you find out more and more and more, you start saying it and people are like, what the hell? Whoa. And it's like, yeah, because that's what's going on. It's all whoa, whoa, whoa. It's all crazy. It's wild. Okay? Why wouldn't armies develop ways to manipulate weather? It's a fantastic way to affect the war. Why wouldn't armies develop a way to make earthquakes? It's a fantastic way to do war. I mean, it's just... people don't know enough. Anyway. So I'll get on with this briefing. There's not much... I've got to try and shoot through all these points. I've got a huge amount of points. And then that's it. That's it for this legal series. Okay. I'm going to read it. I've got to read it on my phone, and I've got to say it to you as quickly as possible. Okay, the government uses the legal system to censor conspiracy theorists, right? So, this experience of me with the legal system, it's what I've learned about the legal system, but also my story, right? So actually, before I get into this, I should probably say the rest of my story. I'll say it real quickly. I can't be bothered, but basically, I appealed the decision at a higher level court. The judge was outrageous and was bought off, basically secretly working for the cops. And she just kept the same decision that the other judge made. And the other judge made the decision with false information that my original lawyer, who was bought off, who was a police spy, my original lawyer fed her false information. I couldn't talk during the court case. So it made my case seem worse. So I got a lot of hours of community work and other stuff. And then I violated some of the rules of the community work, which is a completely normal, common occurrence on this community work. And usually people break it by actually breaking the law, you know, like stealing or dealing drugs or murdering someone or something. But my one was just for like traveling and leaving Victoria without permission. Okay, like it was a minor breakage of the rules. And if it was anyone else, they wouldn't even know. But also if they did know, they wouldn't even bother reporting me because I got special treatment because I'm right wing and the lefties all control the system and they're monitoring me and stuff. I'm not making this up. So then when it went to the judge that was bought off, she gave me like a ridiculous sentence, like 5 months. And just before that, there was a small order from Amsterdam of magic mushrooms, a real small order from Amsterdam of magic mushrooms, and I got accused of doing it, but they made out that the order was like a huge amount, like a commercial quantity, like I was some sort of major drug importer or something running some operation on the dark web. And then I fought that charge, of course, but that scared the hell out of me. And then it ended up becoming just a small possession charge of something that I had at my house because I'm into ayahuasca, and it was a small ingredient that's used in ayahuasca called hormone, and no one even really knows what it is, and it's actually healthy for you. Like, it's not a drug or anything, and it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so I did the 4 months in jail, and I read a lot and learned a lot, and then got released. And that's kind of a rough summary of the story. And it was just off the charts. It's just ridiculous. The legal system is just, whoa, it's crazy. Anyway, so here's these points. The government uses the legal system to silence conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and Sandy Hook. So Alex Jones knows that Sandy Hook is fake, right? It was a fake school shooting so they could ban guns in America. So that then they could do something like COVID, like what they're doing in Melbourne. They want to do that to every city, what they're doing in Melbourne. So you've got to follow Melbourne. But what they do is that if you do have a conspiracy theory, like, or the judge is paid off, or my lawyer's actually secretly a police spy or something like that, you can't say these things because you get accused of defamation. And defamation means that, like, you're spreading mean lies about someone or something. So Alex Jones, even though he was telling the truth about Sandy Hook, they of course came after him and sued him, so it shut him up. So he can't talk about Sandy Hook now. And if you ask him about Sandy Hook, he gives some double talk answer because he can't actually directly say, yeah, of course it was fake. I can't say anything because I'll get sued. He can't say that. So he just goes, oh, blah, 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 and does double talk when he answers about Sandy Hook, right? But this is how conspiracy theories are kept secret, because if you accuse that famous dude of being a pedophile, you get defamation. If you accuse that famous prime minister of doing this or the government of doing that, they use their legal system to shut that person up. So the legal system, this is why the legal system's so messed up, because it's supposed to be a way that, like, we don't get screwed over, but in the end, it's actually used to enslave us, and it actually gets used to abuse us. Instead of protecting us from getting abused, it gets used to abuse us, and it's used in the total wrong way. That's why I actually would think it would be better if we had no legal system at all. So then, you know, you couldn't get abused by it. I said here, if judge is a Mason, like a Freemason, watch out. And I'm not quite sure what I was referring to with that. But it could be that the judge, if the judge is a Freemason, right, and then there's a lawyer involved that's a Freemason, they look after each other. So that could cause problems in your court case. Do you see what I mean? Because you could be going up against a dude that's a Freemason, and then the judge is a Freemason, so he's going to look after someone who's part of his cult. Do you know what I mean? So this is how Freemasonry corrupted our legal system. But this is how it is. So it's like there's all these little things going on that you might not know about, you know. Judges can get kickbacks for supporting tickets and fines. So the company that receives the money from the fines, they pay judges as long as those judges uphold the decisions of the policeman who gave out the fine. Do you see what I mean? So you might go to court, you're like, yes, I'm going to beat this case and I'm going to get my fine removed, and then the judge wants to get a kickback, and so just says, nah, you're wrong, and then you have to pay the fine, and then they get some money from that secretly from the company. So that's what goes on. I don't know how much, but that does occur in the world. There's another thing with lawyers. If you hire really, really expensive lawyers, then that can help you get a better result. And it's not because they're any smarter or anything. It's just because the judge sees that you've spent that much more money, so they'd be a bit nicer, and they go, well, he's spent 40 grand on legal fees. But if you go up and you represent yourself, right, they'll be like, well, who does this guy think he is? You know, obviously our profession's bullshit, and you can just represent yourself because it's just a conversation about what the guy did. And like, I already just have my mind made up anyway, but like, they'll just be like, I'm going to give him a bigger sentence just because he's representing himself. You know, F him, basically. They'll do that, honestly, because the legal system is a scam. They're protecting they want their own kind to get more employment. So if the guy's not hiring a lawyer, they'll be like, well, we've got to make sure everyone who doesn't hire a lawyer gets a bad sentence, so then people learn they've got to pay us lawyers. So it's a freaking scam industry. The whole thing is just a disgusting scam. And I was watching a court case where a freedom fighter called Monica Smith got released from jail just recently in Melbourne. And the judge was on her side. And so I don't know what happened, but some goodness got involved with her case, and somehow maybe good police got in there and somehow helped get her set free, because she was helping organise protests and stuff like that. And so she was lucky. I think the police are starting to wake up or something. But the judge, you could just tell in the first few minutes of listening to it, you can tell that the judge was on her side. Like, she was just she was just shutting the police lawyer down and stuff like that. But instead of the judge, this is where it's all fake. Instead of the judge just sitting there and going, okay, so clearly this is a political crime that you're here for. You just organise protest. We live in Australia. We have a constitution or whatever. We're supposed to be like allowed to protest and stuff. It's part of being in a democracy and stuff. It's outrageous that the Victoria Police arrested you in the first place, right? It's outrageous what Dan Andrews is doing. I mean, he's enslaving us all with COVID. I mean, all these laws are getting broken. So I'm just going to right now just release you from jail. I mean, that's what an honest, direct judge would do, but they don't do that. They don't speak in everyday talk, right? They speak in this crazy language. So even when they're planning on letting the person out, they'll be like, well, this case has this situation, which is blah, 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 blah. And you're listening to it and you're like, this is just a lawyer dribbling shit out of their mouth. Like, they're just never directly honest. And so even when the judge is on your side, it's irritating to watch and listen to, because you're like, can these people just speak the truth? And just, it's such a fake profession. It's just fake. It's just pretending to be like expert, and it's so disgusting, the legal system. It's just terrible. Anyway. I remember I spoke to a guy once years ago when I first was trying different jobs and stuff, and he'd actually recently come out of jail, and it was just some job like waterproofing bathrooms or something, and I was helping him, and he told me how he tried to get hired as a policeman, and he went to the training camp, and on the training camp they found out that he had been to jail before or something, and that he was from a certain family that the coppers didn't like, and he told me how they beat him up and they did like brutal stuff to him, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty wild. And now that we've seen the true side of the cops with these protests and stuff, it's like, yeah, I totally believe that guy with the story he told me. Because the cops were basically like, how dare you try and become a copper? You know what I mean? Like, who do you think you are? Are you coming here to secretly infiltrate us from some mafia group or something like that? And they just beat him up and he copped all the shit. And these are the police that are supposed to be stopping people breaking the law, stopping violence and all this stuff. Meanwhile, some recruit goes to a police training camp and he just gets beaten up for 3 days and stuff. And it's like, you can't believe it. I mean, it's just like, whoa. You know, the people who are supposed to be looking after ethics in society are just destroying ethics. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that story. There was one other case that I heard of where this guy was getting set up by like Australia's version of the CIA, and they secretly hand a little note to the judge during the court case, and it says some little thing that the judge just reads, and then it modifies what sentence the judge is going to give, which is just totally dodgy and just corrupting the court case. But that's the sort of stuff that can go on. So that's why a judge might sentence someone to... I assume that the judge would be on like the CIA payroll, and that's why if that's them receiving their orders of what they're supposed to do, and that's why they do it. But it's just so corrupt, you know. Also, the government has access to psychics. That's honestly a thing, that they use psychics and stuff. So if you ever have any problems with the legal system, if it's a really big, or they wouldn't do it on an unimportant case, but a really big one, like you have to be wary that, you know, if they have access to psychics, well, psychics can find anything out, you know. So like the intelligence agencies using phones and cameras and the internet, they can track things and find out amazing things, but psychics can also find out amazing stuff, and they can make things difficult for you. That's why if you're like a high profile enemy of the state, it's almost impossible to get away with that. It's just too hard. They're gonna get you. Judges, lawyers, and police are inside the system, right? They understand how it works, and they have friends and stuff, so they can get away with breaking the law. Do you get what I mean? Because they're in with that crowd and they can solve it. You know, that's how pedophilia can still be around and stuff like that. You know, the system discriminates against white males. That's definitely one thing. They'd like to destroy white males. I think that bribes occur in the legal system, and you might hear about somebody spending huge amounts of money on a lawyer, but you don't know what that lawyer is secretly then going and doing with that money. Because think about it, like, anyway, people can get manipulated by money when it comes to court cases and stuff. You don't know what happened 3 days earlier when someone offered them a large amount of money if they gave them a certain result, you know? Anyway, that's actually a bit of good hope, because if one day something bad happened where you got accused of something really bad and you were stuck and you're going to do jail over it because there's too much evidence that you did it or something, there is hope that, like, you can get out of that, basically, but you're going to have to spend a lot of money to be able to get out of that. It's a lot easier in third world countries and stuff, though. People are willing to sell out for cheaper and stuff. When I was in the media for the graffiti that I did, oh, that's just not interesting. Sorry, I'll keep on going. So I was a little bit PDS at the time that I did the graffiti, and the PDSness provoked me to do it, because if you're peaceful and happy and chilled, right, you don't really bother doing anything to solve the problems. But if you're getting, like, abused and picked on, like, let's take the situation we're in Melbourne at the moment. The Melburnians are PDS to the abuse from the government. So they rise up and they do things to try and solve the problem. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what happened with me. I mean, I at that time, I was PDS because of certain things. And it made me go, I'm going to do something about it. But if I didn't have those things that were pissing me off, then I'll be like, well, you know, who cares? And I'll be willing to just, you know, not fight it. And this is how PDSness actually, and abuse can actually bring about great things, because it spurs people on to do something about things, you know? And that's why there's some people, I think, who have really nice and clean upbringings, and they never end up achieving anything with their life because they've never been pushed, they've never been cracked, they've never said, that's it, I freaking had it, and then done something interesting with their life, because they're just like, things are just so comfortable, and that they haven't been pissed off enough, they haven't been pushed. And so PDSness, you know, it's not a good thing to pick on someone, but it can be used in a way that can actually provoke people into achieving good things with their life. And I've looked into heaps of famous people and their histories, and you'll find they have something like a family member who died, or like a parent who beat them up, or they have certain things in their past that are not ideal, and it's actually made them into a famous person, because it's made them just go, fuck it, I'm going out and doing what I want with my life. I'm not going to be a manager at a bank or something like that. Boring. They're like, no, I'm going to fight for this. And it makes them into a tougher person and a more dedicated person. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. There's so many things that went on. I don't know if I'd already told you in one of the other videos, but the dodgy lawyer I originally had ended up suing me for just a Google comment, which that was interesting to learn that could ever even happen. And it's just ridiculous. I'm not even going to talk about it. But that's what I'm saying, how you can stop people from... I mean, the Google comment, I didn't even suggest a conspiracy theory in the Google comment. I just said, this guy's a bad lawyer, don't go to him, basically. Right? So what do you think would happen if I suggested a conspiracy theory in the Google comment? Then it'll definitely be classified as just whatever it's called, disparaging, or can't even remember the word, it's getting late, but it's just outrageous. And sometimes in court cases, so listening to this guy who's a right-winger in his court case, and he was telling me the details about it. The judge, they'll set you up with a judge that they know will give you a bad result. And so it superly depends on what judge you get. It's a big deal. So it's just so shifty. But that rollover assigns whatever judge to whatever person is really important. But what the judge will do is the judge teams up with the mainstream media, and that the judge will say stuff like, what Joe Blow did was a disgrace and was an act of terrorism and blah, 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 blah. And they know that the media is there, and the media is there going, and writing it down, And then the media goes and writes a newspaper article the next day, and it repeats stuff that the judge says, and it ends up becoming a propaganda piece. So let's say the judge... You've got the Brendan Tarrant, right? The guy from New Zealand that did the shooting, and he was probably a government agent, like the judge will be like, Joe Blow, what you did could be like Brendan Tarrant or whatever, and it's just an outrageous statement that they're making, right? Suggesting it. What the guy did was similar to like shooting all these Muslims in a mosque. But they say that, and then the media repeats it, and then they team up, and it ends up being the whole court case is a propaganda piece. The whole court case is a piece of theatre production, and it goes out in the media, and it's a way to paint a right-winger as being a bad guy. And like, not only was the judge... Like, the judges basically says stuff knowing that it will go into the media, and it's disgusting. It's just, the court cases get used as propaganda pieces, and it's just, whoa. They'll use possibly media articles that are like, got propaganda in them and that are false. They'll use them in court cases or something. One thing that happened with me and the graffiti thing that I did is that the media made people get outraged by it, and then that influenced the court case and all that sort of stuff because of the way the media reported on it, right? So this is how the mainstream media is so evil, because they're like controlling reality. So if you had somebody who was reasonable, he wouldn't chock the media full of propaganda, And then if someone has a court case, then they just have a court case and the judge makes the decision. But when you've got a media that reports on something and puts all propaganda in it and spews it a certain way, it can't help but filter to the judge and affect the court case. So it's just bullcrap. And that's how they've turned the legal system lefty, by continually having lefty concerns in the newspaper and picking on right-wingers in the newspaper and stuff, and spreading false lies about right-wingers in the newspaper. And then the judges respond to that and end up just making lefty decisions. And the judges think that the mainstream media represents the public's opinion on things, but they don't. They create the public opinion on things. And it doesn't even create the opinion for everyone anyway, because most people don't buy this bullshit. But they do manage to get a certain chunk of society to think a certain way because of their propaganda. And then the judge thinks, well, this is what's going on because of this, blah, blah, blah. And it's so shifty. The dodgy lawyer I had, which was the police spy and stuff, he prevented me from handing up a letter to the judge as a reason for why I did the graffiti. And it was a proper explanation. It wasn't ridiculous and didn't really go into conspiracies and stuff. It was just pretty straightforward. And he also pretended to stutter when he was talking as a tactic, and anyway, it was just ridiculous. That's why I'm over this video series and stuff. And when I know that there's all this other more exciting stuff in the world, I shouldn't be making these videos, but oh, man, I mean, it's just, I don't even like talking about this legal system because it's so horribly disgusting and corrupt. I mean, you've got all these government things that are scams, but the legal system, man, I mean, it's just horrendous. It's an assault on reality and what's right. And I wish it was just a scam. I wish it was like those daycare centers that immigrants come here and they set up a daycare center and they write down fake students and they scam the government. And it's I just wish the legal system was something like that. I wish it was just that was a level of scam. But the legal system is like this disgusting abomination of twists and perversions of reality. It's off the charts in its craziness. There are court cases that are secret, and even though they're supposed to be public, the public record, anyone can go to the court cases. That's how it's supposed to be. No, there are court cases where you can just not go into them. They're just secret court cases and stuff. And the government, what the government will do is they'll find some mentally unstable guy and they'll encourage him to make a bomb, and he'll be like a right-winger or something, and then he'll start making a bomb, and then they'll bust him, and then they'll lock him up in jail for making a bomb. And it was he wasn't going to do that if the agents didn't encourage him to do that. It's just, and then when the court case is going on, nothing gets brought up about the people who encourage him to make the bomb because they're government agents. But it doesn't get brought up in the court case. It's not oh yeah, these are actually government agents. It's just not even mentioned in the court case, but the judge secretly knows that they were government agents, and it's all just disgusting. It's such a waste of resources. Why don't we see judges out and about, and politicians out and about that much in society? It's because I think that they're hiding away because they've done so many naughty things that they don't want to get attacked, pretty much. Do you think Dan Andrews, a dictator of Victoria, do you think he's going to be showing his face in public? I mean, he would have to go undercover from now on, ever, because people are so unhappy with him. And that's another thing as well, speaking of the protest, or that topic, the anti-lockdown people are basically anti-Dan Andrews people. So Dan Andrews, because of COVID, has an excuse of squashing a movement to kick him out of office. That is able to squash a protest movement against him, because no one who goes to no one who's anti-COVID and the lockdowns is for Dan Andrews. We're all anti-Dan Andrews, all, because he's doing all this stuff. And we see other premiers they're all lefties, but other premiers who are not as lefty, and they're more reasonable, but Dan Andrews is just brutal. And so when you know how the legal system works, then you can realize how vaccine companies can harm people and just get away with it. Because the legal system is just used in this perverted, retarded way. And they legalize illegal things, basically. So, yeah. And so when you control the justice system, like this world communist government, then you can get away with doing outrageous things, because you've got all your guys in there, people who think like you and who got paid off and stuff, and then you can just get away with just doing outrageous things. And the medical industry, for example, the way they're able to run this whole COVID thing is because they control the medical system through the legal system, I think. So if a doctor doesn't do what the government says, this communist government, if he doesn't do what they say, they cancel his license, or they slap a charge on him of practicing false medicine or something like that. And then he's screwed. And so the legal system is used as a way to infiltrate and take over the whole freaking medical industry. And that's why you've got a hospital here, hospital there, and even though they've got different names, these hospitals, they're all essentially the same. They're all pushing the same thing because they're all controlled by the same forces. So this is how the legal system is just so bad. We need to break it up, because then if we get rid of it, then doctors won't be worried about getting sued, and then they won't recommend certain things, that can't be named. They won't recommend those things because but I mean, I heard of a doctor recently that was not recommending those certain things that they're all trying to recommend at the moment. And I think he even mentions conspiracy theories or something on Facebook, and they just cancelled his license for that. So they're just controlling, and they're suing him or whatever, and it's crazy. Part of my court cases, I got a psych evaluation, which I didn't really need. I didn't even know why, but I remember a lawyer mentioned it, so I thought, this might be a good idea. And it was just so retarded, because psychology is closely caught up with the legal system, and it's a scam in itself, psychology. So it ties in so well with the legal system. But what they do is they have a person, and they do their psych evaluation, and if you pay the person a lot, then the psych will give a result that favours them. But if you just pay a normal amount, then you're not going to get this special psych report that will assist the judge to give you a good result. You see what I mean? But they can set you up in a court case. They can set you up with a psych or a doctor that they're secretly paying, right? That they're paying is large amounts for. So they can screw you over. So you can be suing like a big organisation for an injury that they've done to you, but you have to go to their doctor, and their doctor's they're paying their doctor a lot, and the doctor, of course, gives a result that helps them in the court case. So it's all dodgy. So the doctors are in on this stuff as well. They're just corrupted. And anyway, so I got a psych evaluation. It was just like a personality evaluation, sort of. And it just didn't conclude anything. It just waffled on for like 7 minutes, sort of speaking a bit about my history and stuff. And it was just ridiculous. And of course, the psych didn't tell me, or the psych didn't tell me, well, why do you need a psych evaluation? Like, if your crime was related to a moment of insanity and you've got a history of being insane, then you have a psych evaluation to prove that you're insane, and then you lay out the person's psych history in that evaluation so the judge can go, okay, so this guy actually is insane and he had a moment of insanity and that's why he killed that person or something like that. I can see how a psych could be used in the court situation in that. But my one, sanity had nothing to do with it, and the psych evaluation didn't come up with anything. Like, it just spoke about my life. It suggested that, like, I have unusual ideas about UFOs or something like that. But it didn't diagnose me with, like, schizophrenia or anger management problems or whatever, or anxiety, or, whatever their thingers are. So it was just a stupid waffling on for 7 pages, and it was funny because I knew more than what the psych knew, and I knew more about the mind and the world, and so that's why I'm like, this guy doesn't know anything about the world. If I mention UFOs, he's just going to think it's crazy, and it's just like, I'm not crazy. It's just the truth. You haven't found out about it, so how the hell are you going to evaluate? I mean, you can't evaluate me. You have no idea what is like. It was just stupid. And it was fake, and psychology ties in well with lawyers. It's a terrible. I don't like it as a profession. It's not good. It's a scam, pretty much. I mean, where's the definite cures for things? Where's the definite cure? If you go to them with something, like, where's the definite cure? They don't have it. You go to them with depression, and they don't even know what's the cause of depression. But they'll waffle on a lot. I mean, I listened to one psych guy called Dr. Grundy, and he's got this YouTube channel, and it's quite interesting. He does evaluations of things. And he was doing an evaluation of Biden, and this was just before Biden got elected, so it wasn't as obvious that he was senile. But it was still obvious he was senile, because he was an old man and he was making mistakes, and anyone could look at it and go, yeah, that guy's senile. This Dr. Grundy analysed it and goes, look, he just waffled on for ages in his stupid video, and just did typical, like, psych lawyer talk and waffle on, and then ended up concluding that you can't say that he's senile. And I was just like, that is such a psych response to that, because it's just like, are you insane? Like, this guy, this is why these psychs and these people who have these crazy minds, it's just like, because this guy was a lefty. It's like, what's wrong with you? I mean, you can see Biden is senile. Why don't you stand there and go, look, it's blatantly obvious he's senile? And it was like, oh, we can't say that he's senile because blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, these are these morons that you go to. So some poor parent in the suburb has some autistic kid. They go to a doctor and the doctor goes, blah, 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 blah. And they're taking the doctor to just this retard, doesn't know anything about life. And they're just waffling on, and they appear to be professional, and then they just get their fee, and they just go home, and at the end of the day, they've just contributed nothing to the world. Anyway, so I think I'm being a bit negative, but I mean, you just got to watch. I mean, when I watched this Dr. Grundy guy, because he did a similar thing with L. Ron Hubbard, where he analysed his life, and it was interesting. It was a kind of good sort of short summary, but then at the end of it, he doesn't say really anything definitive, and you're like, well, what's your psych evaluation? He's like, that's my evaluation. But what is it? What is his mental illness? What was this? And it's just like, they can't come to any conclusion, but it just waffles on. So when you go for a court case to get a psych evaluation, you pay like an excessive amount. They end up probably getting the equivalent of $300 an hour or $400 an hour or something to just write this report. And they just waffle on, and it's just like, okay, this is just bullshit. What the hell is this saying? This is just ridiculous. And it's a scam. It's basically a scam, And by the way, I'm not saying Scientology isn't a scam. I'm saying Scientology is actually quite similar to psychology. It was born out of Freudian psychology and stuff. That's where Hubbard got it from. And there's a lot of similarities between Hubbard and Freud, honestly. And Hubbard was foisting a bit of a scam on, but it's not as much as a scam, but it still is a fair bit of a scam. Anyway. lawyers are like this nerdy type personality, and so they're scared of challenging the government and the system because they're too scaredy pants, if you know what I mean. So you got to be aware of that. So the lawyers and the judges, because they're these scaredy type personalities, but actually no, the judges aren't quite the scaredy type personalities. The judges are more the dominant ones, but the lawyers and the people around them are more the scaredy ones. They go off groupthink, so it's like, it doesn't matter what they personally think. They go on what the group is thinking. And so if the mainstream media does something saying, it was outrageous what the protesters did at the shrine, then the judges are more likely to go, oh, well, it's outrageous. It's just ridiculous. Judges get brainwashed in communism and lawyers get brainwashed in communism because that's the education system. It's all about communism and big government, and they don't respect individual freedoms and stuff like that. And it's just disgusting. Like, I saw this thing about this lawyer, and it was like his name was like Mr. blah, 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 and top human rights lawyer in Melbourne. And you look at this top human rights Melbourne lawyer, and he's like this guy that you can tell would be on ABC and stuff like that. And you look at the human rights that he was doing, and it was all about immigration and all about like helping immigrants flood to Australia. And it's like, this guy here is not a human rights lawyer. Like, he would not stand up for like the protesters' rights to protest or anything that's like right wing. Like, he would not stand up for human rights. It's just all political spin, and makes you think, oh, he's into human rights. And it's like, he's not. Like, there'll be all these violations of human rights going on, and he won't take on those cases because he's forwarding an agenda, you know. Okay, so you have to understand with court cases is, I thought that they were court cases where you come together and you find out the truth about an event, and then you decide the punishment. Well, you just decide if the person did it, and then you decide the punishment. But that's not the case. Don't think that the court cases are coming together to try to find out the truth about what actually occurred that day or something like that. They don't go into the truth, okay? They're ridiculous court cases. They're like just fiction and stuff, okay? So don't get tricked by that. So you get lies and twistings and everything. England had something happen where a girl got murdered in a park, and it was a big high profile thing, and it was of course by a man, and it was a youngish girl, and it was similar to the Eurydice Dixon event in Melbourne, which was related to my graffiti. And they ran the same thing, but it was this big propaganda event in England. It happened maybe 7 months ago or something, but it was a big propaganda event, and they were just following the same script as what they did in Melbourne. And that's because the Communist World Government did that, and the Communist World Government control the intelligence agencies, and the intelligence agencies do these stunts, and they pull the strings of the media and stuff, and they make it so it's a big outrage. Oh my God, a girl got murdered in a park, and then the politicians come into the park and lay flowers, and we're going to hold a big vigil on this night, and it's all propaganda, okay? Girls have always been dying in parks. Men die in parks, but they don't talk about it. You know, they've selected some event to be a big propaganda event. And so then they can go around the schools and say, we've got to do training on boys to treat women with more respect and stuff. And it's all about controlling people and stuff. You know, it's like just recently what I heard about some of the COVID stuff was that they increased the COVID restrictions after they noticed people weren't following the COVID rules. Not because there was more COVID cases, but just simply because people weren't following the COVID rules. And so it's all the psyop. It's all to control the masses. So it's just they're obsessed with controlling the masses. So that's about it. So yeah, I just learnt so much about how it works, and when you go to see a lawyer, I just don't think they're going to really tell you about how their profession is a scam. And they also probably aren't even smart enough to work out how much of a scam it is. But I'm sure they know how messed up it is, but they don't actually bother telling you that because they've decided to go down that path. They've done the years of training. So now they've got to stick with it and just pretend like, it is how it is. But they're not. Someone like me can sit here and just lay you down the truth of it, But they can't really do that because they've got to protect their licenses and they don't want you standing up in court and saying, well, my lawyer said blah, 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 and then all these dramas. So they end up, you just don't get much truth out of them and stuff. It's just, it's an industry that just, it breeds dishonesty, the legal industry. It's made up. It lives on it, dishonesty. The building industry lives on bricks. Well, the legal system lives on dishonesty. It's like how the whole thing operates, and that's why it's so outrageous. Anyway, so that's it for my briefing. That's all I want to say. I'm going to move on to other things now. I've got maybe 5 more briefings to go, then that'll be the end of this podcast. So I've been your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. You've been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. So remember, what you thought is impossible is possible.